Podcasting is the most digitally offline and most offline digital channel that you can buy. The data in it is kind of mucky, yet it's also crystal clear at the same time. It teaches you how to really work with things that are malleable, that don't fit easily into a digital dashboard. But if you look at it through a particular set of tools and grow your capabilities, you will then build skill sets that allow you to then buy more offline media like billboards or TV or all these other channels that you will likely need to buy if you want to jump from the $50 million or $100 million a year brand to $1 billion a year brand, because you can't do $1 billion a year revenue off of podcasting. It's just not possible. There's not enough impressions. There's not enough money in the space to cultivate that on its own. It only works in tandem. But podcasting is a great education channel for brands to make the jump from digital to offline.
This is the Titans of Advertising podcast, an interview series where we go behind the scenes with some of the leaders, agency experts, and marketers that have literally built up modern day advertising before there was a playbook for it. If you're a CMO, marketer, agency expert, or even a founder, this is where you can tune in to get the latest know-how of how to make advertising work for you. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Titans of Advertising, and we got a really exciting one in store today. We've got Adam McNeil, and he has done a lot in the industry, but I'm not even going to introduce him. I'm going to throw it over to Adam to introduce himself. So Adam, amazing to have you here, and excited to hear more about your background. So I'll let you introduce yourself briefly.
Sure. Excited to be here. My name's Adam. I've been in the podcast advertising industry for now 6+ years, starting out in e-com. I worked brand side for a small little company that's no longer that small, called Fume, where we were pushing forward the idea that we can help people quit smoking with a replacement device that was no smoke, no vape, and no nicotine. And I had the unfortunate challenge of having to grow the business almost on my own for a season, where we were kicked off of Facebook ads and Google ads and were solely dependent on influencer marketing. And podcast advertising entered that picture back then. And the rest of the story has been told probably a couple times over, but now I lead a media buying team at Adopter Media, where we predominantly work with brands kind of like Fume in that direct response D2C space that really care about every dollar that they spend and having that dollar return at least $1 or more back, or performance marketing, as I think people would normally call it.
Why did Fume look at influencer marketing over all the other channels?
We were a great brand on Facebook when Facebook was good to us. Facebook did not understand our product. It looks like it's a vape, or it looks like it's a cigarette, and it looks like all of those products that you cannot advertise on Facebook. And so nonstop, we would get banned on Facebook ads. Nonstop, we'd get banned on Google ads. We had real hard struggles getting onto any of the digital platforms because they're so strict around the rules. And if anything gets even close, they'd rather just say no than to let it through, even if it could possibly be approved. And then we eventually got approved. And it took actually so much effort and signing a big contract with an agency that had a great contact at Facebook that finally gave us the time of day to look through our product and documentation that allowed us to go in. But we ended up not working with that agency afterwards because it just didn't work with them. But that one unlock was so worth it for us, because then all of a sudden we could grow in digital. But yeah, we were like almost entirely dependent on influencer marketing and organic ads or organic content that I was also somehow managing on TikTok and Instagram at some point. So it was a mess of a season, but it was a lot of fun and taught me how to be scrappy for sure.
And what did you do before Fume? How did you get into that? What put you into this industry?
I knew the CEO. I was a Nepo hire. I was college students alongside the CEO at a small little liberal arts college in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. And him and I had connected when we were in school. He told me he was launching this product called Fume, yada, yada, yada. I toured the house in which they were manufacturing the product in and how they custom built machines to make the product. It was all wood turned, wood lathe, really cool. And I was like, this is kind of sick. Like, this is really cool. Nothing came of it for a while. COVID hit. I'm working a job as a recruiter at a college where my entire job was to go around Canada telling students why they should come to school in person at a small school where community is everything. And all of a sudden, now I have to call people on the phone and tell them why they should take an online education from a school that nobody knows. And I just couldn't do it. Like for me, that sales pitch was not it for me. And I needed to get out. And along came Braden, the CEO of Fume, and he said, "Hey, we're finally starting to grow. Do you think you want to join our team?" And I said, "Hell yes, I do." I packed my bags.
Anything but that.
Exactly. I packed my bags and I moved to Calgary, moved into the house where Fume was being birthed out of, basically. And the rest was history. Like, it was an impulse decision to work for something that was innovative, cool, and going to be a challenge in a domain that I had no expertise in.
And now you work with all these brands. What do you learn from all these brands? Like you work with lots of different kinds of brands, right? So you like what I think is interesting about that is you get to look under the hood a little bit and understand the business. But what are you seeing today?
There's probably a lot of principles that exist beneath a lot of the brands that I tend to find as very successful, and also brands that I tend to find as not as successful. And some of them are probably more gruesome in my perspective than others. A lot of the brands that are really, really successful with hard to produce products, meaning like products like Fume, where we have lots of innate challenges around promoting and marketing that brand, especially early on. The types of people that end up making those companies succeed are really scrappy, really not like, you have to at some level be naive to people's perception on you as well, because you're fighting an uphill battle. You have to have an arrogance that you're going to do it to make it work, and you have to be scrappy. You have to fight for it every day. If you have a great product that sells itself, the types of people that end up working at those companies do not have that same level of hustle and grit to make that work. It's super different. And I get to see that across different types of brands. And typically in that early stage D2C place, you work with a lot of hyper anal, very data focused, very performance minded individuals that are just scrappy, and you learn a lot of techniques and different things from them. And I think similarly, if you've ever watched the TV show The Bear, I reference it a lot with my team. I love the show. There's the main guy, Carmi. He works a stint earlier in his career under, I call him Jeff Winger. It's the guy from Community. I can't remember his actual name, the actor's name, but he works under him, and he's a terrible boss. But yet Carmi learns all of his like really, really good techniques that then allow him to be one of the greatest chefs in the world. And so I find that some of these e-commerce brands just produce incredibly good talent under really harsh environments, because the environment itself is really difficult to make it work. But if you can make it work there, you can kind of go and do anything. And that's why I think DR and D2C marketers are just like a really unique group of marketers, because they have a lot of challenges that they have to face.
I can relate to this so much with different companies that I've worked with in the past, and the ones that are trying to get to this like crazy summit that seems so freaking hard to get to are the ones that like attract these people, and they just by default they have to be so freaking scrappy to figure things out, and things move, and it's kind of fun to be a part of.
It's exhilarating. I had some of the best years of my life. Like, truly loved that season of life a lot.
What is like how do agencies and advertisers stay scrappy so they can do the good work that maybe the CMOs at the bigger teams or whatnot are not prepared to do?
Well, I think it comes down to who you hire and the culture you build fundamentally, and the types of brands that you want to work with. I think if you have a desire to work with those scrappy brands, Christina Rubino actually put together a beautiful post the other day that I was like clapping in the background for. And she was talking about how, as she's matured in her career, she likes working with the hard to work with brands, because those are the brands that will teach you lessons that you can then learn and grow on. I'm the same way. And I think most of our team is the same way. We get excited when we have a challenging brand to work with, because it means that we're going to have to learn something new. My team knows I had one brand that I worked with that was quite a challenge for me. It was really frustrating. It was like causing a lot of issues for me mentally, physically. Like, it was a lot of work that I was going through, and we ended up having a breakup later on, and it didn't, we didn't stick it out. I still look back on that brand and everything that I learned. It made me such a better podcast ad buyer. I became so much better as a result of it. And yes, I don't always like the ingredients that went into the recipe that led me to where I am today. I look back and there were things that sucked about it, but it also shaped who I am today, who I'm really grateful for. And so I like to look for people on my team that have symbols of that. Like, have you had to fight for something, and did you win in that fight? Or did you at least not give up? That's important to me, because we're going to work with a lot of brands who have a don't give up mentality. You have to keep pushing forward. So I like to hire people that worked at brands, typically in the D2C space. That's a really, really good starting point. We don't always find that. We can find that in other places. We have lots of very resilient individuals on our team. And to me, resiliency is really important because in this space, a lot's going to change over time and you just have to pick yourself back up and keep walking, keep going.
Tell the audience about how many brands you've worked with.
Sure. I have personally managed, like as a direct media buyer, probably close to 15 to 20 brands now, but I now oversee the team and collectively have overseen over 40 brands in their general strategy and growth. And across those 40 brands, over $100 million worth of podcast advertising specific spend that was performance tracked and measured, not awareness campaigns, which I always like to clarify. Every impression had a dollar value associated with it and what came back on
it. That's awesome. So 100 mil, that's a lot of money.
More than I've made personally. So
how much did you return for 100 mil?
That actually would be a really fascinating number to try and pull because it would vary a lot on each client. And the way we would typically measure it would be based on a cost per acquisition basis. I don't always look at a ROAS number because ROAS can be, extrapolated over lifetime value of a customer. So sometimes a first-time customer purchase, you don't need to hit a 2x ROAS. You can hit a 0.25 because that customer is going to come back month 2, month 3, month 4, and then make their return that way. But what I can say is like over the large period of time, that $100 million is all profitable for our clients across the board because we just have some outsized gains in some areas. That doesn't mean every single dollar of that $100 million was profitable. There's lots of bad buys that happened in there, lots of learnings that took place, but overwhelmingly in the majority of those dollars, very profitable and some quite profitable.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Let's go to your advertising experience. What was one of the first things that you built that actually works? Like you're at Fume, you're trying to figure out this whole vaping ecosystem and how to navigate that. That I'm sure there was some good things that you did there that started working, but what stands out to you?
Sure. Well, I'll take you back in time actually to before Fume was even a quit smoking company. When I got recruited to work for Fume, we were not a quit smoking brand. We had signals that we could be, but actually we were an aromatherapy device originally, and that's how it was originally marketed and designed.
Wow.
We, prior to that, actually were a fitness accessory. So let me take you through 3 brand transitions that took place, and I came in during transition number 2. The product was started by a bunch of guys who like to lift weights and run long distances, and they were sweaty dudes. And they used to use peppermint oil on their hands, and they'd breathe it in like this to open up their airways so that they could run farther, push harder, etc. Like it was a normal biohack within the gym.
Crazy.
And what they found is that they would get peppermint oil on their hands that would get into their eyes, and that didn't feel so good. So they created a little device that allowed them to put like peppermint oil on a cotton wick and inside a wooden tube essentially. And that was the original Fume to help open up their airways to breathe better. They then saw the product there. They tried to pitch it out to NFL, to CFL, to athletes. A few of them picked it up and they were like, oh, this is cool. It never took off. Like that was not a good domain for us. But what did take off without them really pushing into it was the aromatherapy market. And all of a sudden, all of the essential oil moms of the world were like, oh my gosh, it's a diffuser for my pocket. And so it really blew up in that space. And that's where revenue originally came in. They were getting reviews saying, I use this for quit smoking. I use this to quit. I use this to quit. But they didn't ever position it that way or really lean into that market. So I came in during that season of aromatherapy with the desire of pushing the brand towards quit smoking. While I was in the aromatherapy season, one of my first projects was to help launch a holiday box. So we had these different flavored cores that you would have with Fume, and we had a custom product. It was a Burl made Fume. Burl's a type of wood. And I helped draft up a lot of the story and the narrative and the marketing pitch behind it. And I coordinated an influencer campaign with 20 to 30 different influencers for that season. And it was one of the best individual product launches we ever did during that time. And it was really scrappy. It was really relationship heavy. I had created a Slack or an Instagram group chat with all the different influencers, giving them instructions. I brought them all together, which nobody ever does. They always have like individual conversations with everybody.
That's interesting.
And I got them to be competitive with one another. It was like, I created this whole psychological system in which they were supporting and sharing everyone else's post. They were also competitive with one another because all of a sudden they'd call me and be like, I can't believe my post isn't doing better than this person's. I'm going to do another post. And we didn't pay for it. Like they were so excited to be a part of the launch, to make it work. They were all affiliate commissioned and flat feed, you name it. And it was like 4x, 5x return on ad spend of what we put into that campaign. It was insane what we ended up getting back on it during that stint. And that was when we didn't have Facebook ads or Google ads. So it was like a huge, like, Adam saved his career moment because I was on the chopping block.
Well, have you ever done that in the podcast world? You just get like a bunch of podcasters together and you share the data and you're like, look, it's an interesting angle.
Yes. That you have a question later on, and not to jump the gun, but this is the piece of podcasting that I brought into the industry that no one really was doing at scale or at large, was transparency around performance data. When I first entered the podcast space, I was a naive, ignorant individual. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to tell the podcasters how much profit you were making off of their podcast ads. But I would just tell them, and I'd go, hey, we spent $1,500 on this ad. We got $2,000 back. We're not really doing enough here. If you can do it at $12.50, that's enough margin where it makes sense with our cost of goods and all these things. And they're like, Adam, no one's ever told us all these details. Yeah, happily, we can do that. Not a problem. Like, that makes sense. Because I was being upfront and transparent about our needs, what exactly we needed to make it work. And that was how I started to grow. And I was getting insanely good rates from creators that they were like, I've never given this rate to anyone, but no one's ever told me any of this data. I brought that, I started sharing on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden the industry started to change a little bit. I got feedback from a couple networks where they would tell me, like, Adam, like, you're the first person that's ever told me to raise a rate on a podcast because it was doing that well. And after that point, now I get good rates on those shows because they trust. And trust was the commodity that I wanted to trade in. I didn't want to trade in the commodity of influencers and impressions and reach and CPMs. It's trust. Like, I need you to trust that what I'm asking for is a genuine ask based on real data points, not based on Adam's emotions going, I want to see how much of a better deal I can get out of Cam today. I want to see if I can bully him down a little bit. That was never the point. It's like, what actually is needed for this campaign to be successful, and fight for that and be transparent about that.
Is this in the test phase? Because in the test phase, it's harder, right? Because you need some shows that perform really well to offset the ones that don't, to put a case together for the brand to keep going. But as you get going, then I think you kind of get a little bit, it becomes more like, all right, how do we optimize everything? So I'm curious if you've ever done that at the test phase and how you think about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's part of the whole process. The first time you ever advertise on a podcast, you don't really know how it's going to do. There's a lot of different things that we'll look at to decide whether or not it's a worthwhile bet to take and that the odds are in our favor that it'll work. We have a whole buying modality behind that. But once it goes live and we start to see the performance coming in relative to the spend that we've put on it, now we have a fuller picture on what starts to work. And once you kind of get past the first couple months, you start to see a good baseline of like, okay, this type of show in this bucket of genre and influence and engagement or whatever tends to perform really well at a $22 CPM. So now we kind of know the rough benchmark of what that sort of audience is worth. And over here in this bucket, it performs at a $30-ish CPM. And then we can kind of negotiate around those numbers for any net new testing. And so we know roughly what we should expect to be okay. But in the first couple shows that you do, or the first media deployment, you're taking some risks and you got to get some data back to know what you're actually going to then fight for.
Yeah, but I guess you need that data to go back to the creator or the network and say, hey, look, like, this is working really well. You know, we're comfortable with you upping the prices a little bit.
Totally.
That's an awesome, like, win-win, you know, and like, we talk about this a little bit on the show, but like, there's multiple parties that have to win, you know, in this industry, and the more that you can uplift, you know, each other, the better. And, you know, because there is a shared goal that is the same, which is like
100%.
Make the publishers more money and make the brands more money.
Mm-hmm. I've tried to always say there's only two parties that matter in the entirety of the funnel when we think about it all: the audience and the brand revenue. The podcaster is an important part of that, but the podcaster is an amplifier for that audience. They've cultivated a community, etc. But they're a steward of that audience too. If they abuse that stewardship role, they will no longer be worth it to that brand. If they overinflate their downloads by purchasing downloads, it's no longer as worthwhile of an audience. If they overly overdo their ad load and they insert 20 plus ads per episode, they're going to start abusing the ears of their listeners, and it's no longer going to be worth as much. And similarly, if the brands are bad actors in the space, they set up an unfair ecosystem for the creators in which they can't be successful on their own. We need creators to be successful for them to keep creating content and to steward bigger and better communities that we can now monetize and leverage for the brand's growth. Like, we have to see the value of every link in the system and what props it up. If we start creating bad incentives because brands are really greedy or manipulative around things, it's actually going to have a trickle effect on the audience and on the creators and on everybody in between that we're not going to like in a few years.
Yeah, totally. I love it. Who gave you the most important piece of advice early on?
My main business professor, his name was Michael Bell. In my first year as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed marketing student who thought he knew everything in the world about marketing, gets called into his office. What I thought was going to be a conversation where he was going to look at my paper and say, Adam, this is a really good paper. We should submit this to some journal for review or whatever. Boy, was I wrong. He sat me down and he's like, Adam, can you explain this marketing concept? That was the whole paper. And I was like, sure, Michael. I mean, I just wrote a whole paper on it, of course. And he sits there for 5 minutes and lets me just monologue to him about everything that I think I know about this thing. And he goes, that's great, Adam. Can you explain it in one sentence? And I was like, no, what do you mean? I just gave you 5 minutes of explaining it. Like, can't you see that I know so much about it? And he's like, Adam, I don't think you understand it. And I don't think, and he said this was the quote that has stuck with me forever. If you can't explain your problem in one sentence, you don't understand your problem yet. And for me, that was rock solid advice that I've held for the rest of my career, where when I feel like I don't understand something, it's because I don't know how to articulate it quickly yet. If I can articulate it in one sentence and it's clear and you can understand it, I've fully understood it now. And I find that with my team often, where they ask me something, I'm like, I don't know how to explain this yet. I haven't figured it out. And I need to do more diving, more research, more figuring out to get to that point.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you understand about advertising, or what's your point of view on advertising that you think nobody else in the industry is seeing?
When I saw this on the list, I was trying to think, what could I really say that would, make me look great, that everybody else would be like, oh yeah, that's a very Adam trait. I think people should be much less afraid of their competition stealing from them and far less concerned about their ideas being sacred. Ideas are really cheap. People have said this lots, right? Like, ideas are cheap. Execution is the thing that really matters. I have documented almost all of my decision making of how I have grown brands, everything that I've done in public on LinkedIn. Everything that I've done is very replicable. It's not hard to do. I think podcast advertising is super easy. But me posting content and sharing those strategies has allowed other people to point out weaknesses in myself that now I can adopt and fix and refine so that I can become a better buyer and I can become a better leader of people and I can become better. But if I don't open myself up for that scrutiny publicly, I will never grow in those ways. And people are so afraid that, if I put this idea out there, some other agency is going to steal. Maybe they will. So get better so that they can't. Put it out there, let people critique you, let people challenge you, let people assume that, you're not as good as you think you are, whatever it is. Put content out there. Let people critique, show off what you're thinking, let people show you what you could be thinking better. I've benefited immensely from posting live on LinkedIn or on X or Twitter or whatever we call it these days. Super valuable for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that I definitely share that sentiment where it's like, look, like, a lot of us aren't all expert. Like, we're doing stuff, but like that level of mastery is so high, and there's just like there's so much collective intelligence in this industry that to not do certain things because you may not feel like you're the the top master is probably not the most advantageous to your growth or your impact or whatever. So if you can work together and be vulnerable, share what you think your point of view is, then the world can help you chisel it, and we can all win. And I think in the industry that obviously you're in and we're in podcasting, like, there's a lot of brands that aren't in this industry and they're not spending a lot. And so they need more confidence. And so I think, like, you sharing some of these methodologies and points of view is really valuable to get them, like maybe to help them understand why this could be good and why they could win at it.
I think so. I think we as an industry would benefit from better buyers participating in this industry. So a lot of the work that I try to do on LinkedIn is educating the industry on what I think are better buying modalities. And I hope that the villain in my world I see as like impression-based buyers or reach-based buyers or holdcos, because they are unfortunately causing a trickle effect that is harming the bottom end of the industry, which will cause a sore that the rest of the industry will eventually feel. But if we can help correct them and promote better strategies for them that they can then deploy their massive budgets behind, it will then reinforce good systems in our industry and make the playground that we're all playing in a better playground for everybody. And that, for me, is super worth it. Even if I'm giving away stuff that makes other people more competitive against us, that doesn't bother me because I'm not competing against them. I'm competing against an industry that wants to eat itself up from the inside out every day.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think about podcasting? Like, as a brand, you're looking at all of the media mix, right? And then podcasting is just this tiny part of it. But what do you think the future of modern media is? Like, I know you spend a lot of time in podcasting, but I think it's also a massive limitation to be in it every day and not looking outside as much as a brand would be. And obviously there's good reason for that, because like you can really sort of advance a company through podcasting. But yeah, I'd love to get your point of view on like the whole landscape and what you see and where everything fits.
Sure. I'll be the first to say, I don't think podcasting is the be all and end all. We're a relatively small industry compared to other mediums of advertising. I don't think podcasting should be the only channel a brand ever looks at or does. And I don't think we need to have the ego that we're the best either. There's lots of other channels that are better for certain types of brands than podcasting will ever be. And I would rather be forthright in saying that. However, I think podcasting does serve a really good place in a lot of brands' media mix during a certain season of their growth and development. Podcasting is the most digitally offline and most offline digital channel that you can buy. The data in it is kind of mucky, yet it's also crystal clear at the same time. It teaches you how to really work with things that are malleable, that don't fit easily into a digital dashboard. But if you look at it through a particular set of tools and grow your capabilities, you will then build skill sets that allow you to then buy more offline media like billboards or TV or all these other channels that you will likely need to buy if you want to jump from the $50 million or $100 million a year brand to $1 billion a year brand, because you can't do $1 billion a year revenue off of podcasting. It's just not possible. There's not enough impressions. There's not enough money in the space to cultivate that on its own. It only works in tandem. But podcasting is a great education channel for brands to make the jump from digital to offline. And similarly, legacy brands that have done so much offline media, podcasting is actually such a beautiful introduction to more digital-based advertising as well. So for legacy brands, it's a beautiful place for them to get familiar with all the strategies that they use to measure and now start to get more data points that are digital oriented. You can get TransUnion data, IP data, all these different things that you can then use to then better inform your digital buying. So I like it for that reason. I think any brand that's doing more than $10 million a year in revenue to $50 million a year in revenue probably should be deploying some podcast spend. If you're under 10 million a year, I think it depends on your brand and on the capabilities and limitations. These are general buckets. If you're under $1 million, probably don't touch podcast ads yet. You probably should be growing using things like Facebook or Google or TikTok or way lower effort channels where you can pump a lot higher volume, get feedback much faster.
Yeah. One thing I do notice about podcasting and think it's very powerful for it is just getting those initial insights and attribution on the influencer channel. So if you are going to do influencer, you could go to Instagrammers and then deploy a bunch of money on that, but you're probably not going to be able to attribute success very well and understand which kinds of creators or influencers are hitting with an audience. Whereas with podcasting, you can, with audio pixels, you can get a pretty good view of like what's hitting and what's not, like what kind of creator, which I think is like very powerful for that type of strategy.
Totally. It's been a long time since I've been in the Instagram influencer game. I'm sure there's good data in there now. I don't want to assume that we have better data because there's probably amazing agency buyers or brand buyers in the Instagram influencer space that would argue me and be like, no, Adam, like we know like really detailed wise, like audience profiling, et cetera, based off of Instagram creators. I'm sure there's some incredibly intelligent people there that would prove me wrong. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're right. You got a lot of info. So I think personally, like if I'm a brand, if I go back brand side and I had to launch a brand from zero, I wouldn't start with podcast ads in the influencer channel. I'd probably go to TikTok or Instagram first. Like admittedly, as a guy who spent most of his career buying podcast ads, I wouldn't start here.
Yeah. And why?
The risk is so much bigger on podcasting. The budgets are way bigger. The CPMs are a lot larger. The attribution is sometimes cleaner, sometimes muddier. But if you want really clean attribution, you have to increase your costs to get things like pixel-based attribution, a post-purchase survey, and the effort level goes in a lot higher. Instagram is faster to deploy in general. However, there's a lot more potentially fraud or lower engagement or maybe bad actors in that space more so than in podcasting. And my experiences in podcasting, I know how to weed that out better. I just think Instagram is a lot lower risk to test up front. And you can do product seeding and hopefully get some free content and posting to get the engine rolling. Less possible on podcasting. Typically, you have to commit to 2 to 3 episodes, a lot more, even if you don't need 2 to 3 episodes to test and see the results.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because if you're in an interesting niche as well, though, and there's a couple of like really well sought after experts that have strong audiences and incredible influence, maybe there's a case where it's worth testing in conjunction, even when you're in the earlier phases of the company.
I don't think it's impossible. I've actually wanted to do this at some point. I want to acquire a small e-commerce brand that's doing virtually no ads and see if I can grow them only using podcast ads and then retention-based email flows. So just like generic e-commerce stuff, but no Facebook ads, no Google ads, no other cold advertising. And I want to see if I can truly grow a brand with nothing but podcast ads. That's kind of like a hobby project that I want to take on at some point.
Well, what brand are you going to build?
That's the problem.
Maybe you build your own one.
Maybe I need to build my own. I got to find a brand that's willing to trust me with that. I don't want to get into product manufacturing, man. When I worked at Fume, that was the part of the business that I wanted to stay the furthest away from because it's so complicated. It's such long negotiations. It's super tedious working with manufacturers. Like, God bless the people that do that work. Not for me.
What do you think about podcasting though? Like, it takes so long to get a campaign off the ground because there's just so many back and forths and whatnot. How do you find that and streamline that process so you can get these campaigns going faster, you can get the learnings faster, etc.?
If you have a killer ad operations team like I do, like it just makes things so much better. Tiffany and Sid and Kelsey are the leaders on our ad ops team. Like they're really good at what they do and they just move fast and they're able to get a campaign up and going with the help of our buyers. We move quickly. And if we've built a reputation around being a fast moving agency, we can often get ads live quicker. And brands are getting antsier and antsier to go live faster and faster. So we have to start meeting that call. And I don't know, like I've seen under the hood at other agencies how slow some things can be at times. We really don't want to become slow. And so we have to keep checking ourselves because it's so easy to, let's add another process. Let's add another this. Those things slow down the experience for the end customer, which is the client. We need to be really diligent about not adding things that slow down that process. Because if we can move quicker, we will then be more profitable in general, because the more we can churn, the faster we'll grow.
For people that are listening that have never done podcasting, what's the average time they can expect to get a campaign off the ground from start to first ad run?
Average, probably like 3 to 4 weeks, is maybe longer. I think some people will take much longer if you want to build out a really thorough, beautiful campaign. But if you know what you're doing, you know who to talk to, you have great relationships with the networks that they trust you to move quick, you can move fast. If you know everything that you have to do, get your copy ready, get your promo codes, get your products shipped out, do your onboarding calls, etc. We can get ads live in like 2 to 3 weeks sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a while, right?
It's still not tomorrow.
Brands want to be impatient because they want to get data and they want to get sales and everything, especially marketing teams.
But here's the hidden blessing. when you talk to other types of influencer mediums, oftentimes it's a pay up front or you don't get content. Podcasting has a weirdly unique, unfair advantage compared to a lot of other channels in that it typically operates off of more of a radio cycle billing or a net 30 end of month or a net 60 end of month or whatever. So even if you have to wait 2 weeks for your content to go live, you don't pay for that content for another 4 to 6 weeks after it's gone live. Creators hate it.
Get your sales.
But it's the industry. Exactly.
Yeah.
Very cash flow positive buying system. Super good that way.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Let's dig into your experience. We've heard about all the good stuff that you've done, but what's some stuff that you've done in the past? Like maybe a decision that looked right at the time that turned out to be wrong. Maybe it was a big miss. It's always interesting to hear about these learnings because I think these shape how people operate.
There's probably a few things that I like uniquely brought to the industry, but the area that I've spent the most in is news and politics. Like I'm a Canadian and I'm pretty politically maybe ambiguous or very individual in what I think about things, but I have worked on both sides of the political aisle a lot with ad buying, probably more so than most buyers in the space. That's been a domain of expertise for me. And I had seen a pattern for years and years where if the Republicans were in power in the States, you want to index more on Democratic content because the Democrats have someone to attack for that period of time. The content's more engaged. They're always trying to find flaws, et cetera. People really like that content. It's fired up. And on the inverse side, if the Democrats are in power, then you probably want to put more money onto the Republican side of the aisle because they have someone to attack and the content's all fired up. And I made a huge bet for a couple brands in the turning of the tides where Trump got reelected. And I said, okay, we're going to put a ton of money on all this Democratic content. And it flopped. Like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what happened. The engagement was there. Everything was looking so positive. The views were through the roof. The engagement was through the roof. The buying power was at the lowest it could have been. And there was such a withholding of money from the left side of the political aisle, the Democrat side in the States. And part of that was due to fears of recession, fears of all these things that they weren't then buying products. So even though the engagement was right, the reach was right, I was buying at X impressions and getting 2X more of the impressions because I made a right call on it in advance. The buying power of that audience had completely dissipated. So nobody was buying product and it was way harder to get performance. And I was like, what the hell is going on? It was the worst call I've made and it backfired hard, but we recovered over time.
That's so interesting. And I think that consumer confidence is down massively. It makes sense. But like when you're buying, you're probably not going to that level. Like you're not looking at macroeconomics enough. Like maybe don't have enough time.
Someone finally showed it to me where I was hitting my head against a wall going, I don't understand why this is working. Every data point says it should be working. And there was a guy on Twitter who was documenting consumer trends of blue states versus red states and buying power and buying perceptions. And actually, it was more favorable to keep advertising on Republican content during that season because the Republicans under Trump's direction, they thought we're not going to be in a recession. We're going to have the greatest surplus we've ever had. So spend, spend, spend. There was way more money on that side being purchased on commodities and products that people may or may not have needed. And so it was a bad call that I made based off of, I think, what was good decision making, and unfortunately backfired and had to learn and adapt.
So you're going to put more on the leading political party now.
No,
is that the answer?
No, I don't think so. I think I just have to be way more diligent of figuring out where consumer spending is going. Like as I've matured in my career, I've had to pay more attention to macroeconomics. That's been more important.
Yeah. All right, Adam. So we're getting through this, and this has been awesome. What's one thing you believe about where advertising is going that maybe most people in the industry are still getting wrong?
I don't know. I don't know the future, but I'll say the few things that I'm looking at with way more interest. In-person events are way more impactful, I think, now than they've ever been. I think when I talk to my friends, when I talk to people, everybody's talking about an event that they want to go to in person. I think the amount of artificial intelligence or digital slop or whatever you want to call it that's out there and how chronically online we all are, it's a red ocean. the online space of advertising content, overindulgence, all these things that sometimes I think people just want to be with one another. And if you can, as a brand, show up in those more intimate spaces, I think you will have a really great experience. I had the privilege of taking one of our clients to sponsor Crooked Con, Z-Biotics. And they're one of my favorite brands to work with. I love their product, love the brand, love the team. And we've worked with Crooked Media for 3 or 4 years running now. It's been a great partnership. The main hosts of Pod Save America are huge fans of the brand and product. We coordinated a campaign in which we sponsored their live event. We were serving their pre-alcohol or selling it at the event, and getting the audience members that would come up to us and be like, I've heard your ads for so many years. I've never tried the product. I'm so excited to try it. And we had 2 days of the event, so we got to hear people's before and afters and everything of, we tried the product and I woke up, I felt amazing, whatever it was such a cool experience how we got to participate live. Brands are so digital and so removed from those in-person spaces at times that I think they lose connection with their audience. And it was one of the best experiences for me because finally I was like, oh, I get it. Like, this is the impact that podcasters have.
Because you just hear a bunch of stuff when you're listening to this, but there's never a good sampling opportunity. And yet you've been so primed and there's so much trust that's involved. So if you think about the funnel of people that are listening, there's only a small proportion that are going and buying, and so what about all the rest that have been primed? And, like how, and oddly, we focus on this problem on the creator side, like when we first started in this industry, and we were trying to collect emails so you could do email marketing and retargeting in this industry, and running contests where you give away some stuff and not everyone would win, but then you would say, hey, look, like here's a massive discount to go try it, or whatever. But it's there's something special about that, right, where you can just go in and obviously it doesn't work for every product, like 8 Sleep. I mean, you could have like a bed. You could have a bed in there.
I would love to get a free Pod 5 or whatever they're on. Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could have a bed there for people to go and test out and make a little fun activation. That would be pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, true. They should pair it with the sauna and work with the sauna company. And so people go and do a quick sauna, they get all sweaty and hot, and then they go lie down in the 8 Sleep bed with the cooling pad on there, and they can go, oh, this feels so good. It's kind of like cold therapy.
That's awesome. I feel like networks could do that, right? Like they have these like premium sponsors that are always there, and they could create this like really cool activation with all of it. And then,
Totally.
like you've got like these massive influencer type audiences. Yeah.
Totally. My only beef, I'll say, with events is I find they're so overpriced for brand activations. I think the people that run these events, they're so expensive to put on that they need the money to make them, but they price them as though they think that they're going to drive so much. But like, you have 500 people in the room. They can only sell so many products. It's not that impactful for them. Your podcast has 500,000 people per episode. The podcast episode is worth more than the in-person event, but that in-person event is just so rich with high influence. Conversion rates are going to be higher. It's going to be a better experience, yada, yada, yada. It's just not worth usually as much as they ask for, is what I've learned from some of the events I've
never figured this out. Like, I feel like this happens a lot with, and, like when you're building a company, you get invited to these dinners, and like these platforms, like, all these software platforms put on a dinner with all these founders. And it's like, the dinners are expensive. And there's only like 20 people in there, and it's an intimate dinner or something. But then again, like if they do it enough, they kind of penetrate the right people, and then they become relevant and trustworthy versus this brand that's you see online. Gosh, good luck measuring that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. What are you paying close attention to right now that most people might be ignoring?
For me, I'm not doing much media buying anymore. I lead a team of media buyers that are doing the work that I used to do. And what I am now paying attention to most is how do I become a better leader of people? Like, to me, that is now the number one skill I need to develop. I was a really good practitioner for a number of years, and I need to be good at now mentoring and growing other practitioners, which are not the same skill sets. I'm a shitty helicopter parent at times where I want to get in and do the work and solve the problems and whatever. But that doesn't give my team the opportunity to learn how to solve those problems on their own and find new and unique solutions that I wouldn't have even thought of because they're in a different environment than I was in. So leadership and seeing how other people have been growing their agencies is now my number one priority. Is how do I continue to build the ship that's Adopter Media that's going to continue to sail through the muddy and rocky waters that we're always in more efficiently and with more strength and with more posture in general. So I've joined recently. This will be a soft pitch for anyone who's an agency owner out there, or founder, or a leader. There's a group called Agency or Join Agency or whatever, and it's like the Founders Club or whatever those things are, but just for agency people. And it's been honestly such a great environment for me to learn from other agency leaders from different domains of expertise. There's no other podcast advertising agencies in there, so I'm I don't feel any competition. It's just all these Facebook ad people and whatnot, but they're always talking about here's what we're doing to grow our team, leadership, yada yada. It's so helpful for me right now. So that's what I'm paying attention to, man. I hope in the long term, people don't remember me for making good ad buys. To me, it's so inconsequential. Sure, made some brands some money, made some products famous, whatever they were. I really do hope I'm remembered for the way that I worked with people. I hope that people, at the end of my life, whether I have a large or a small funeral, people come up and tell stories about how I helped unlock something in those individuals so that they could be better at the work that they were doing, that they could grow, and that their careers or their lives or their social relationships or family relationships all thrive because maybe I was an important part of that journey or helped them to see something they didn't see. And so for me, that would be what I would hope is the end result. What I don't know is the inputs that always lead to that. And I hope I get to grow in that way more, where I can help people see what they don't see in themselves.
Isn't it crazy? It's so easy to just get in the thing and do the thing and try and collaborate with whatever the thing is that you're trying to do. But really, at the end of the day, we just want to, we want to make an impact. We want to do good things and be remembered for it, I guess, for working with people and being awesome. Because like you say, fast forward 50 years. I mean, hopefully we're not in our rocking chairs then. But, looking back, it's if we went on some really cool adventures with some people and shared some good times and, it was fun, I think that's the most meaningful part. Who should we talk to next? Who's who should be in this in the series?
I think you should talk to Eric Dick. Eric Dick, he runs the D2C newsletter, but he's also connected to an agency called Pilot House, and as well as he helps run agency, that community I was talking about. I think it would be so fascinating to hear from someone who gets to connect with so many different disciplines of agency buyers and different advertising modalities, how he sees them all interconnected. And he's a fellow Canadian, and I always want to prop up people from my nation. He's really good at what he does. Lovely individual, world of knowledge and connections and friendships in that space as well. So I think he would bring some really unique insights that not domain specific people would have.
Yeah, an incredible. Fun fact, I was a Canadian permanent resident for a while there. But
I knew we would get along for a good reason. Come on.
I no longer hold it, but it's Canada is awesome. Yeah.
Where in Canada?
I was in Toronto for 4.5 years.
Yeah, the classic Canadian.
Yeah, no one likes Toronto, I know, but it's still good. It's still good.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, amazing, Adam. This has been so fun to chat and dive into your world, and congrats on all you've done in the industry. It's just awesome to hear the thoughts behind it.
Thank you.
How does the audience connect with you?
You find me on LinkedIn, and that's a place where everybody seems to find me and connect. You'll find me shit posting on there once in a while of thoughts that are in my head that I need to get out. So connect on LinkedIn. Adam James McNeil, I think, is the handle, or look up Adam Podcast, and I'm sure it'll come up.
And Adam wants you to critique anything.
Please rip me to shreds.
Yeah. But not too much.
No, more. Give me more. I truly, I love when people tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, let's make us all better and do better ideas. So let's critique it all. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cam.
Thanks, Adam.